63 on Wednesday. Do I hear
Per bottle. Order today and we'll ship it direct to your door for free. Go to drinkhint.com and order today.
The former fighter pilot sat quietly and listened. He got 26 years to life. It was over for Todd. But not for anyone else. Not really. As James White's daughter, Caitlin, told us,
I was told that monsters don't exist. My parents always told me that. And after going through that trial and seeing what I had to see, I can tell you with absolute certainty that that is 110% false. He is a monster.
and Rachel's men. We weren't surprised to hear that James has his own idea of what justice might be.
Did you have any thoughts about what would happen if the justice system didn't look after Todd in a way that seemed reasonable to you?
He would have been dealt with.
By whom?
Me.
You know, they could have put you in prison for life.
It would have been a one-way mission. He and I are both going to go down together. I'm not going to shoot him. I'm going to kill him with my two bare hands. I'm going to do to him what he did to Rachel.
Tim Charrington, the man who failed to commit and then watched the love of his life go on to her terrible end, has his own way of taking revenge, mostly on himself.
Kind of a tragic love story from your point of view.
It is, it is.
I mean, this is a woman you could have spent the rest of your life with.
Very, very easily could. Yes, I should have pulled the trigger when I had that chance, you know. I blew it. I didn't, you know, give her the ring earlier.
Well, you're still paying for it, aren't you?
Yeah, yes, I am, yeah. That's a tough one.
Different kind of thinking across the country among the friends of that other Mrs. Winkler, the one whose death on a lonely mountain road is still officially labeled accident.
I mean, this is a beautiful woman who gave so much, was so nurturing and caring. I don't feel like there's been justice for Kathy.
I think about Kathy's death all the time.
About whether she could somehow have done more to prevent a second death, the murder of Rachel Winkler.
My heart breaks for those children. I wish I could hug them all and tell them I'm so sorry that I didn't press harder to make them open this case or be that strong person that I was. I apologize.
And someday, said Don Hatfield, he'll find the words to tell the story to Rachel's children, Ariel, Alex, and Eva.
This whole story is a mixture of murder and blood and failings and grace and Jesus and heaven and God, and so there's some real craziness to it. But that's the character of my life and some of Rachel's life, and it's just kind of life in general.
You can find the others.
In the meantime, he said, he's trying to be the kind of parent he wasn't with his own children, but is now for Rachel.
I believe it's my destiny to raise them. I intend to do that, you know, with God's help.
Selling a home is expensive.
And I'm doing that with Smile Actives.
Introducing Smile Actives with Dr. Bredeson's on
with you. It just brings a lot of people together. They listen to good music, stuff that they would
for any reason.
Pro pain therapy device, 2 body.
So we'd be happy to discuss this in greater detail with you. I'm not sure I exactly understand what the issue is, but I can have my staff contact you and learn more. We're certainly very supportive of CDFIs and want to make sure that they can become established and receive all of the additional funding that Congress has made available.
Went into a central closet in the house, and he held her, and that was what saved her life.
Well, when it's your time, it's your time. And it was his time, and not mine, for some reason. I just hope everybody remembers to hold on to life, to hold on to each other. Show that you love.
Once something of that magnitude happens, the question is, where do you start? How do you even begin? And thankfully, there were a number of volunteers and organizations and relief groups that knew where to begin.
There was just support from everywhere, I mean, for weeks. You know, if you needed something, it was there. It was just overwhelming.
It was amazing to see all the people that showed up that just cared. They just wanted to help in any way that they possibly could. And without them, we wouldn't have been back on our feet.
The rebuilding process just was somewhat miraculous in terms of what was done with the school.
It was impressive to see the rubble of the high school behind you one day and later it being completely rebuilt.
It looks exactly like it did before the tornado.
You know, if there's any good that comes out of a disaster like that, it does give a town like Henryville a chance to start over. There's new buses, there's new homes, businesses that are sprouting up there. They accepted the hand that was dealt to them, and they came together as a community and moved on as best as they can.
Hornet Pride became kind of the theme because it was up on the sign outside the school, and it made us all stronger just knowing it was there.
The entire community grew from this experience. We all knew that no matter what, we were there for each other, and we're all proud of our town. We all love our town.
Tornadoes, the most violent force in nature. But just as powerful as the storms themselves are the beliefs they spawn in survivors.
Then everything just starts shaking. I saw Jesus.
I believe that I went to heaven after the tornado.
Guardian angels, visions of God, visits from deceased loved ones.
Hearing that there are paranormal events following these traumas doesn't surprise me at all.
The angel touched me right here.
These are the believers.
Oh my God.
Whose traumatic experiences in the eye of the storm convinced them there was something divine in those 200-mile-per-hour winds.
And then when they saw reports of civilian casualties, decided to unannounce it. So our assessment is that that this was a Russian strike, and that they used a short-range ballistic missile to conduct it.
Well, new reports are now coming in of intense bombardment in the northern city of Kharkiv near the Russian border. The regional governor says at least 50 strikes have been reported, including artillery, mortars, tanks, and rockets. Ukraine expects Russian forces will try to advance on the Donbas region from the area near Kharkiv. Ukrainian military commanders in eastern Ukraine say Russian forces massing near the Donbas region are almost ready to launch an all-out assault. The U.S. estimates Russia's fighting strength was degraded about 15% over the past 6 weeks, requiring substantial reinforcements and resupply. The U.S. has been building up its military strength in neighboring Poland and has been conducting joint exercises with Polish forces. America's top general has endorsed creating permanent U.S. bases along NATO's eastern flank as a deterrent to further Russian aggression. Well, CNN correspondents are covering the conflict from multiple angles. We have Phil Black in Lviv, Frederick Plankton in Chernobyl, and Salma Abdelaziz in Chemsky, Poland. But first to CNN's Phil Black with more on the horrific aftermath in Kramatorsk. And a warning, the images in his report are shocking and graphic, but they reveal the true level of brutality the Ukrainians are blaming on Russian forces.
For many who fear what is coming in eastern Ukraine, Kramatorsk station has been a gateway to safety. Crowds of people have packed its platforms in recent days, desperate to increase their distance from a region Russia says it will soon conquer with overwhelming force. Witnesses say thousands came again on Friday morning. They sought safety. They couldn't escape the war. These are the moments after a ballistic missile exploded at the station. After debris and shrapnel tore through the crowd. So many dead bodies, a person cries. Only children, just children. When the screaming eventually stopped, The broken bodies of the innocent remained. We have to hide much of this scene. Most of those lying bleeding and still are women and children. Survivors fled. We managed to contact some by phone while they sheltered together in a public building, still scared and shaken. This woman says she looked up when she thought she heard a plane, then it exploded and everyone went down. This man says he heard the blast and threw his body over his daughter. The remains of the missile that terrified and hurt so many crashed down near the station. Hand-painted Russian words mark its side, declaring the weapon's avenging purpose. It says, "For the children." The author and their intent are unknown. The result is yet another moment of horror in a war with endless capacity for taking and destroying innocent lives. Phil Black, CNN, Lviv, Ukraine.
Well, an Australian military expert says it's hard to believe Russian forces did not know they were hitting civilians. He spoke with my colleague John Vors earlier.
There's only two ways this could have happened. One, that the Russians were surveilling the station and they would have seen it was civilians, or two, they weren't, but they should have expected there were civilians there. So this is a significant breach of the laws of armed conflict. There is no reasonable prospect of them not being guilty of some kind of war crime, at least for those operating the rocket and potentially the military chain of command above them. In places like Kharkiv, even in Kiev, in Mariupol and other cities around Ukraine, the Russians have been quite happy to resort to dumb bombs dropped from aircraft and artillery shells to indiscriminately shell and bomb those cities and kill the civilians within them.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says it was important to start her visit to Ukraine in Bucha. That's the Kiev suburb where dozens of civilians were found brutally murdered after Russian forces withdrew, many of them in mass graves. Von der Leyen says those responsible for the atrocities will be brought to justice.
It is the unthinkable has happened here. We have seen the cruel face of Putin's army. We have seen the recklessness and the cold-heartedness with which they have been occupying the city.
Ukraine's Prosecutor General says 164 bodies have been found so far in Bucha. Remains are also being recovered in the nearby town of Borodyanka. And the Prosecutor General says 28 bodies have been found in the past couple of days. More are expected to be uncovered as teams search through the rubble of destroyed buildings. Well, for more perspective, we're joined by Ukrainian Parliament member Marion Zablotsky. Good to have you with us. Firstly, can you just share your own experience at the moment? Do you plan to stay in Ukraine with your family and continue working for the government?
Well, of course, we are staying in Ukraine. My family, my wife and my small kids are, of course, with me. And we have been working and gathering inside Kyiv during the hardest times. So we will never leave our job and we will never leave our president.
And over 40 days into this war, just give us a sense of what you're seeing and what you're hearing from people you're speaking to.
What changed in the recent week is that Russian leadership with Putin at the top is extremely frustrated at their losses in Ukraine. They have lost, we think, significantly more in combat power. Of course, we believe that more than 15,000 Russian soldiers were killed, and several times over that, they have deserters, they have people who have been injured. So the fighting capacity has dropped significantly. And in the recent week, we have seen quite some shocking statements from the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, one of the close political advisors to Kremlin, who are closely advocating genocide. They are openly using such terms as re-education of Ukrainians, the murders of them, deportations, etc.
The atrocities we are seeing in Bucha, near the capital, where civilians in cars and on bikes were executed, and now the train station in Kramatorsk, where the scenes are just horrific. Civilians, many women, elderly children fleeing were hit with this short-range ballistic missile. Why do you think Russia is targeting civilians in this way?
Well, first of all, it's deliberate. It's not some sort of a mistake. For example, when they fired 2 missiles at Kramatorsk, they for sure knew from the media that people were evacuating from there, and they chose not precision-guided rockets, but those that end up just within plus minus 1,000 feet in range. I think they are following up on their recent statements about doing genocide towards Ukraine, and I think they are trying to provoke us on further behavior at revenge on Russian civilians and on Russians still living in Ukraine, although none of this has happened so far. I think they want to turn this conflict more bloody so that the Russian soldiers have greater motivation of fighting in Ukraine, which they currently do not at all.
And talk to us about the sort of support you're getting from Western countries. What more do you need? And from where you're sitting, will Ukraine win this war?
Well, we for sure will win this war. More than 90% of Ukrainians, according to recent polls, actually believe in the victory. And we are extremely grateful at the billions of dollars that were spent on supporting Ukraine. That is not taken for granted. But we hope that everybody understands that we will continue to ask for more and as much as possible. At the moment, we do need heavier weapons. So Stingers, Javelins are okay, but they are only useful at the closer fights. And we have had losses of our own, of course. We lost tanks, we lost armored vehicles, and we desperately need to replenish them. So we are currently asking Western governments to increase the types of munitions to a more heavier ones, so we can target Russians more effectively.
And Maya, I understand you have a baby son. Do you have family helping you as you try to work on getting more weapons into the country?
Of course, and I think we will also be working more closely towards even with American public, because, for example, America has one of the largest community of gun owners. I think we will be quite possibly maybe even asking some Americans to share their gear, which they may find not very useful for themselves, but we for sure will use them very gratefully in Ukraine.
Mayon Zablotsky, we appreciate your time. We wish you all the very best, and take care.
Thank you.
Well, Ukraine's Prosecutor General is leading the country's investigation into Russia's war crimes. She appeared on CNN earlier to react to the attack on the Kramatorsk train station.
It's ordinary strategy of Putin's army to kill just civilians who won't save their lives. 52 deaths for this moment we had in Kramatorsk. It was women, it was kids who wanted to leave, who wanted to be evacuated. We understand that it was unnecessary deaths, and the aim of these deaths is just to kill people who are not they. And this we actually see in Ukraine. Kyiv region, for today, more than 800 deaths. Bucha, Hostomel, Irpin, Borodyanka. And it's cruelty, actually, it's atrocity crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and we see they do their war no by rules at all.
Well, international condemnation was quick to come as the brutality of that attack on the train station became apparent. French President Emmanuel Macron calling it an abomination, saying all the victims had in their hands were pushcarts, teddy bears and suitcases. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres tweeted that there must be accountability for a gross violation of humanitarian and human rights law. And the President of the European Parliament says there can be no doubt that war crimes are being committed in Ukraine.
Children's lives cut short, mothers and children, women and men bombed indiscriminately. What we are seeing there are crime scenes, international war crimes being committed against a sovereign people who are simply fighting for democracy and for their country.
Well, the fate of the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan hangs in the balance in the country's parliament. Lawmakers have been meeting today to vote on a no confidence vote against him. It's unclear when the vote itself will happen. Mr. Khan has been dogged recently by claims of economic mismanagement, and he claims the confidence vote is part of a US conspiracy to push him out, something the US denies. Well, still to come on CNN Newsroom, millions have fled to Poland to escape the fighting in Ukraine. We'll have a live report from the border just ahead. Plus, we'll hear from a doctor who's working out of the train station hit by the Russian airstrike. Stay with us.
Here's to real flavors, real meals, real good. All of Knorr's high-quality pasta and rice sides are now made with no artificial flavors or preservatives. Knorr, taste for good.
Migraine attacks? You can't always avoid triggers like stress. Qulipta can help prevent migraine attacks. You can't prevent what's going on outside. That's why Qulipta helps what's going on inside. Qulipta is a pill, gets right to work to prevent migraine attacks and keeps them away over time. Qulipta blocks CGRP, a protein believed to be a cause of migraine attacks. Qulipta is a preventive treatment for episodic migraine. Most common side effects are nausea, constipation, and tiredness. Learn how AbbVie can help you save on Qulipta.
Bipolar depression. It made me feel trapped in a fog.
This is art inspired by real stories of bipolar depression.
I just couldn't find my way out of it.
The lows of bipolar depression can take you to a dark place. Latuda can make a real difference in your symptoms. Latuda was proven to significantly reduce bipolar depression symptoms, and in clinical studies had no substantial impact on weight.
This is where I want to be.
Call your doctor about sudden behavior changes or suicidal thoughts. Antidepressants can increase these in children and young adults. Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Report fever, confusion, stiff or uncontrollable muscle movements, which may be life-threatening or permanent. These aren't all the serious side effects.
Now, I'm back where I belong.
Ask your doctor if Latuda is right for you. Pay as little as $0 for your first prescription.
Each year, Americans waste $21 billion by overpaying on car insurance. That's why I went to thezebra.com. Because while every company claims to save you money on car insurance, the Zebra shows you who actually can.
Compare car insurance for free at thezebra.com today.
Still struggling with IBS-C, Mike knew he needed a plan. With his doctor, he chose a once-daily pill, and his next chapter began. And that's when he said yes to adding Linzess. Linzess is not a laxative. It helps you have more frequent and complete bowel movements and is proven to help relieve overall abdominal symptoms, belly pain, discomfort, and bloating. Do not give Linzess to children less than 2. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling. Could your story also be about IBS-C? Talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzess. Learn how AbbVie and Ironwood could help you save on Linzess.
If you have diabetes, it's important to have confidence in the nutritional drink you choose. Try Boost Glucose Control. It's clinically shown to help manage blood sugar levels and contains high-quality protein to help manage hunger and support muscle health. Try Boost today.
Selling a home is expensive and stressful, so we set out to create a better home selling experience with a network of the most successful real estate agents in America that'll sell your home for as little as a 2%.
Jurors said they could not agree on charges against the other two who were charged in this particular case, Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. That resulted in a mistrial. There are other trials to come. The two men charged with impersonating federal agents returned to court Friday in Washington, where prosecutors laid out new details of the charges. According to court documents, one of the men tried to gift a gun to a Secret Service agent assigned to First Lady Jill Biden. During Wednesday's raid on a luxury apartment building in D.C., FBI agents found firearms, ammunition, body armor, handcuffs, DHS patches, a drone, and surveillance devices. Those men are due back in court on Monday. One of the suspects involved in the shooting of Lady Gaga's dog walker and stealing her 2 French bulldogs has accidentally been released from a Los Angeles jail because of a clerical error. James Howard Jackson had been in custody on attempted murder charges in connection with the 2021 shooting, and we're told at last check Jackson remains on the loose. Well, you know the saying, Will Smith did the crime, assaulting Chris Rock on stage at last week's Oscars, so now he's going to have to do the time, with the Motion Picture Academy announcing Smith's punishment Friday. Senior correspondent Alicia Acuna has details tonight. Good evening, Alicia.
Good evening, Shannon. The Board of Governors for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences made the announcement Friday after a meeting to address the matter. In a letter saying, quote, the board has decided for a period of 10 years from April 8th, 2022, Mr. Smith shall not be permitted to attend any Academy events or programs in person or virtually, including but not limited to the Academy Awards. Academy President David Rubin and CEO Don Hudson also acknowledging they could have handled the shocking moment better, writing, quote, during our telecast, we did not adequately address the situation in the room. For this, we are sorry. This was an opportunity for us to set an example for our guests, viewers, and our Academy family around the world, and we fell short. Unprepared for the unprecedented. Will Smith remained in the audience for the rest of the March 27th Oscars program, even after walking on stage to slap host Chris Rock when the comedian cracked a joke about Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett, and receiving a standing ovation after winning in the Best Actor category for his work in the movie King Richard. Smith, who publicly apologized for the slap and also the disruption of the awards show, has since resigned from the Academy and today issued a brief statement on the decision saying, quote, I accept and respect the Academy's decision. In its statement, the Academy did say it wanted to express its deep gratitude to Chris Rock for maintaining his composure. Smith is still eligible to be nominated for future awards, Shannon, but he does join a very short list of banned artists, including Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. Shannon.
All right, Alicia, thank you. Tiger Woods' amazing golf comeback 14 months after a devastating car wreck is going to run through the weekend at the Masters following a strong opening round Thursday. Woods bogeyed 4 of his first 5 holes Friday, but battled back in challenging conditions to shoot a 2-over par, 74, and he made
5 a.m. on MSNBC. In this family, we don't kill sheep. We kill
huge and overwhelming number of people, as you can imagine, for the Polish government to take in. And yes, there is some support that is being rolled out, but you hear over and over again that the Polish government, the Polish authorities can't handle this alone. They're appealing to the international community, and they say that everyone, the entire international community, needs to provide the support for these more than 2.5 million people here right now. Linda?
Yeah, that support has to continue. Sama Abdelaziz, good to have you with us. Thanks so much. Well, earlier I spoke with Dr. Joanne Liu from Dnipro, Ukraine. She's a physician with Doctors Without Borders. I asked her about where the teams are working and the challenges for people to leave certain cities like Mariupol. Take a listen.
Right now, we're working in places that are basically close to the front line, and then we work on 3 main pillars, which is supply, making sure that they have everything to respond to increase influx of patient. We're working on what we call mass casualty preparedness, which means is when you have a big amount of patients coming all at once because they're wounded, how do you triage them? How do you prioritize them? How do you make sure that everybody gets the care they need? And then the third part is working on evacuation, medical evacuation of wounded and medical people to a safer place to make sure they have a continued, I would say, healthcare management.
And so talk to us about the sort of injuries that your doctors, the Doctors Without Borders, are treating right now.
So we've been, seeing, and then most of, and it's like in many other, I would say, crises, the early case management is actually done by the hospital, the Ukrainian hospital, and they have like great skills, great competences. So, but what we've been saying on patients that we are evacuating is a lot of them has been injured, especially the first transfer we did from fleeing Mariupol. So they had blast injury and they had gunshot wound, but mainly blast injury.
Thanks to Dr. Joanne Liu. Well, a Ukrainian mayor killed by Russian forces in the Kyiv region has been laid to rest. Ukrainian authorities say she was brutally murdered along with her husband and son while being held captive. They were shot in the head with their hands tied behind their backs. The gruesome nature of their death is shown in a photo, and we want to warn you, it is very graphic and disturbing. The family shown here in a shallow pit, half buried. A friend of the mayor and her family spoke with CNN's Erin Burnett earlier.
When the war started, a lot of villagers left the city in order to escape from war, but her family decided to stay because they really wanted to help others. I think that they are really heroes of Ukraine because they stayed up to the end in order to help others and support others.
Well, some 11 mayors from Kyiv, Kherson, Mykolaiv and Donetsk are believed to be held captive by Russian forces. That's according to one of Ukraine's deputy prime ministers. Well, if you would like to safely and securely help people in Ukraine who may be in need of shelter, food or water, please go to cnn.com/impact. You'll find several ways you can help. Well, we started the hour with a devastating missile strike at the train station in eastern Ukraine. But now we want to bring you a message of hope and love. Meet Anastasia and Anton, newlywed bride and groom. Just days ago, the couple got married, surrounded by the ruins of the northern city of Kharkiv. The nurse and doctor have volunteered as medics since the start of the war. The groom, Anton, has an important message. He says love will defeat everything. And despite the horrors that are happening in this war-torn city and throughout Ukraine, he adds there is still room for love and kindness. Well, in the build-up to the 2022 Eurovision Song Contest, Ukraine's nominee has arrived in Israel for a preview contest. Kalush Orchestra, a Ukrainian musical group, will be performing at the Eurovision contest next month in Turin, Italy. Ahead of the event, the frontman of the group said they will be dedicating their song, Stefania, to their motherland.
I want to say that this song was dedicated to my mother. But now that there is war in Ukraine, it is gaining new meaning and sense, because metaphorically many people interpret the words my mother as my Ukraine that needs to be protected. That is why I want to urge people to cherish peace. It became clear only now how important peace is when there is no peace.
Well, the band also did an impromptu performance at the news conference. I'm Linda Kincaid. Thanks to all our international viewers for watching. For you, Expo 2020 is next. And for those of you joining us from North America, we'll be back with more breaking news from Ukraine after a short break.
It's Empire Today's biggest sale.
Danielle also explained that she knew Sam was having an affair, despite Sam's best efforts to conceal it.
Did you know where he went today?
Raped her, and he had probably not been on the ground and slit her throat either.
Lotmore was standing, he was never kneeling down.
And what you're actually hearing there, the sound of people in Shanghai, China. They're stuck in a COVID-19 lockdown, trying to cheer up their neighbors, shouting out encouragement to each other up and down the building. It's something they've started doing now that it's another bad wave for them there in China. And apparently one of the things they say is something that equates to go for it. Now watch this. A hot air balloon crashing in San Diego, captured on TikTok. The guy just kept on filming as they went down. The balloon slammed to the ground. It was caught in a wind gust as it was trying to land. You can hear the pilot shouting to everybody to stay in the basket, to hang on, and amazingly, no one got hurt.
Come here.
A terrified 9-year-old boy comforted by police after he was trapped in a car after it got stolen. His mom immediately began tracking his location in real time through his iPhone, sharing that with police. They were able to pit maneuver that stolen car and rescue the young boy inside. Thank God. And this police department in Arizona getting creative with its PR, starting a TikTok account starring the mustachioed motorcycle crew. Well, at least one of them's got a really fancy mustache. They have gone viral, and they say it was all about trying to get safety awareness out to a new generation on TikTok, which I got to be honest with you, seems more interested in the mustaches, but hey, maybe they get the message anyway. If you've got a video to share, hit us up at Shannon Bream or at Fox News Night on social media. Well, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki reportedly headed to MSNBC for a new job once she leaves the Biden administration. Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz, tells us why this news is not sitting well with some of her future co-workers, allegedly, at 30 Rock.
Believe it or not, I missed you all a lot.
Jen Psaki has been taking flack since word leaked that she'll be joining MSNBC and hosting an online show, but not for a few weeks. And that awkward overlap for the press secretary has stirred concern among NBC journalists.
How is it ethical to have these conversations with media outlets while you continue to have a job standing behind that podium? Well, there are a range of stringent ethical and legal requirements that are imposed on everybody in this administration.
CNN reported that NBC staffers complained to News Division President Noah Oppenheim that this tarnishes their brand. A bit ironic since CNN tried to hire Psaki as well. Oppenheim argued that NBC News had nothing to do with the hire for the cable channel's opinion programming, but with top NBC talent often appearing on or hosting shows on MSNBC, that distinction may be lost on viewers. MSNBC contributors include many Obama administration veterans, and Simone Sanders, Kamala Harris's top spokeswoman, was recently hired. Psaki, who spoke for Barack Obama's State Department before joining CNN and then joining President Biden, is part of a long-spinning revolving door for White House press secretaries. Robert Gibbs to MSNBC, Sean Spicer to Newsmax, the late Tony Snow from Fox News to George W. Bush to CNN, and Dana Perino to Fox, along with Ari Fleischer, and from the Trump years, Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Kayleigh McEnany. Jen Psaki, who hasn't confirmed or denied the MSNBC move, generally won the respect of the White House press corps, but the sharp criticism she still has to deal from the podium with her future cable colleagues raises the question of whether she should have resigned more quickly. Shannon?
All right, Howard Kurtz, thank you. And Kevin is back. He's brought a friend with him, by the way. This is the season of Lent, so thank goodness we have not given up our midnight snack segment for Lent. We've got something special here, courtesy of our senior guest booker, Bridget Mary, and her dad. Thank you, Dad. But first, Kevin, you've got a story to tell about a man, and it involves Lent and not giving up beer, but giving everything else up but beer.
And I'll tell you all about the bunny in just a second. I love this story, by the way. A Lenten sacrifice even Homer Simpson would be proud of. An Ohio man giving up food for Lent to sustain an all-liquid diet consisting only of beer.
What?
I kid you not. Dell Hall doing this now for 4 years in a row, sustaining a beer-only diet, but he says it's not about getting drunk. Instead, this beer-only diet is actually raising money for the Ken Anderson Alliance. That's an organization that actually helps adults in the area of physical disabilities, creating living spaces and opportunities for work that are both relevant and rewarding for those in need. So that's the good side of this, and here's the real rub. He swears he's lost 25 pounds doing this.
Well, I guess if he was already drinking food, eating food and beer, and he's just gone to the beer and no food.
That would make sense.
Although I did read that he's taking vitamins during this.
Oh, yeah, you better believe it. I'm still worried about his midsection. I mean, your waistline, all that beer?
Oh,
Come
if
on,
I was
brother.
just drinking beer all day, that would not be. I mean, to work and to drive and everything like that, that would complicate everything. No thanks.
It's hilarious. I got to meet this guy. Now, obviously, a lot of people do give up things for Lent. Chocolate is among them, thus we have this huge bunny here. A lot of people give up
3
chocolate.
pounds worth.
You know, have you ever given up anything for Lent?
Oh yeah, I do every year, and it usually involves social media and websites that are time wasters. And I got oh no, you're cutting the ears are going off.
Yeah, the ears are going by.
Have you named him?
No.
It makes it more difficult to take him out once you name him.
I'm just going to name him Bye-Bye.
Do you do, listen, I didn't grow up Catholic, but I love the idea of Lent and just being more focused. What about you?
Yeah,
do you
this thing is too, yeah, I'm just going to have to break this out. I apologize, Sean. There you go.
We've got a bite.
It was actually solid. I thought this was going to be
look at your muscles. You haven't given up working out for a while, clearly.
You know what? But I have given up. I've given up chicken before. I've given up fried foods before. I've given up wine before. And in this case,
Did you give up chocolate?
I did not give up chocolate this year, although if I had given up chocolate, I'm just going to slide this over to you.
Did you give up rabbit this year?
I did. Did you like some chocolate?
Oh, in the commercial.
Okay, I'm gonna leave this piece here just for you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll take the big gigantic piece here, and I'll have that. And by the way, I'll be back later. We'll have something else to talk about, something that I think everybody will appreciate.
Okay, so but nothing for Lent this year?
Oh no, I gave up fried foods, and I actually gave up coffee. Dario would tell you.
That's right. You were doing the coffee.
That's right. I've been really good.
Very proud, my friend.
Thank you.
But we didn't give up Wordle.
No, we didn't.
No one can stop us.
We're rolling on that.
All right, see you in a few.
All right, see you in a bit.
All right, coming up, we're going to take you back live on the ground in Ukraine for the latest update there. Stick with us.
Save yourself.
Men and women alike, and also many different ethnicities. It doesn't.
In the world, especially the soil. The Ukrainian government released this drone footage apparently showing that the Russians dug combat positions there. The operator of Ukraine's nuclear plants says those Russian soldiers could have been exposed to significant amounts of radiation. We went to the edge of the Red Forest Zone and found a Russian military food ration on the ground. When we hold the dosimeter close, the radiation skyrockets to around 50 times above natural levels. Ukraine says Russia's conduct in this war is a threat to nuclear safety in Europe. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant hasn't been in operation for years, but of course this confinement needs to be monitored 24/7, and also there's spent nuclear fuel in this compound as well. And it's not only in Chernobyl. Russian troops also fired rockets at Europe's largest nuclear power plant near Zaporizhia in southern Ukraine and are now occupying it. Ukraine's energy minister tells me the international community must step in.
I think it's dramatically impact, and that is really the act of nuclear terrorism, but what they are doing.
Chernobyl is close to the Belarusian border. The Russian army used this road as one of its main routes to attack Ukraine's capital. The interior minister says his country needs more weapons to defend this border. Today, the border between totalitarianism and democracy passes behind our backs, he says. The border between freedom and oppression. We are ready to fight for it. And the Ukrainians fear they may have to fight here again soon, as Russian President Vladimir Putin replenishes his forces, continuing to put this nation and nuclear safety in Europe at risk. Fred Pleitkin, CNN, at the Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine.
Well, despite a strict lockdown and widespread testing, a COVID outbreak in China shows no sign of slowing. Details on that and the latest travel warning from the U.S. government. Plus, Ketanji Brown Jackson has her moment in the sun before taking on one of the toughest jobs in Washington. The details just ahead.
If you have diabetes,
father had them, I have them. Unfortunately, my
baby, you just.
For example, one of those stages is the
Hunting is a key skill for captive lynx.
Es fundamental que un animal cuando salga al campo sepa cazar. Si no sabe cazar, se quedaría en cautividad, ¿no?
Learning to hunt is a long process, even with an adult around. At first, they seem intimidated by the prey. Then they try to master the art of ambush, which doesn't go very well at first. And even when they manage to get close, they come out empty-handed. The rabbit doesn't even look worried. It will be a while before these guys can catch a meal.
Allergies that are aggravated by
amazing.
We try to give back as much as we can.
Good morning, young lady.
My mom has a very generous heart. Oh my goodness! And then I was like, yes, of course. I'm so flippin' excited. It's fun to be outside.
You have a good day now.
I will.
Positively KELOLAND on KELOLAND News and on KELOLAND.com.
Cholesterol with this. What does that mean?
That I went to heaven after the tornado. I saw Jesus and all the family that passed away.
If you have time
in preparing the second part of the rule, they're not fully separable. So this is tremendously important legislation. I congratulate you and Congress for passing this. It is a critically important effort. It's very complex. We have to get this right. I can't agree to a deadline. I'm not positive when we're going to get that
I'll tell
out.
you, it is critically important, especially what's happening in the world with Ukraine. And if you can't commit to the end of the month, when will you be proposing the access rule? Can you give us an estimate for when we will be able to see this rule?
Well, certainly this year, within the coming months.
Well, Secretary Yellen, my message to you today is a very simple one. Please speed up the process for the beneficial ownership rulemaking. This is taking far too long, and we need action now, not in a few months, but now. We don't know who's behind buildings in New York and elsewhere, which are just bank accounts. There are no lights in the buildings. People don't live there. They're anonymous shell companies. And law enforcement wants to know, the public wants to know, the Ukrainian people want to know who owns this property, and we can't get to it until the rules have been made, and we are way, way behind, and it is an emergency. Now I'd like to move on to the substance of the rule. There are a number of things Treasury could do in the access rule to make the beneficial ownership database more usable.
And then the look of pink diamonds. So this is a gorgeous, and it's all real. I mean,
value, all yours for just 5 payments of $49.99. We're
I'm Dr. Holmes with Falls Community Health. Living in the Midwest, we know that the winter months can come with some challenges. For some, this might include changes in mood and an impact on mental health. Seasonal affective disorder is a condition that often occurs in the fall or winter and may either cause or worsen depression. This condition is common and can lead to a loss of interest in activities you enjoy or cause feelings of sadness or hopelessness. Other symptoms may include changes in appetite, energy level, and memory. Sometimes seasonal affective disorder can be so severe to cause thoughts of self-harm. But fortunately, this condition is treatable with use of light therapy, counseling, or medications. Exercise and proper sleep habits are important for maintaining good physical and mental health as well. If you have questions about seasonal affective disorder, contact your doctor or Falls Community Health.
Hi, my name is Chad Sunvold, and filling potholes is another way Sioux Falls has street cred. This is the worst part of the season for potholes. When you come out of a cold snap like we had for a couple weeks and into a warm-up, definitely creates the worst opportunities for potholes to come up. My pothole crews stay out 365 days a year. We always are repairing potholes year-round, doesn't matter the weather. Right now we've got 6 crews out, and we try to get about 50 or 60 of these pothole requests done. Know that one pothole request sometimes means 15, 20, 30 potholes. So one request could be way more than just that one complaint. We typically have 2 or 3 different products for our pothole repair. One's called Rock Asphalt. It's a new product, has a really wide range of temperature use from -30 up to about 120 degrees. We also have a UPM product, which is a cold asphalt mix, which we can also use as a backup. And then our summer repair is with hot asphalt. Patches typically last, depending on the area. Concrete streets, you know, that rock asphalt really is our shining star. It's got about a 75 to 80%, sometimes 90% hold, depending on where they're at. If a pothole is in like a waterway where a lot of water's running through it, it doesn't last nearly as long. But if we can get those potholes filled on a good street, they should hold for, you know, quite a few months, actually. Anytime you want to report a pothole to the city, there's the One Link, Sioux Falls One Link is definitely where we would like you to go, so download that app. We really encourage you to take a picture of that pothole so we know what you're describing and where we can find it, and then give us a good address. Make sure we have a good address, good location, good description of what we're looking for. That way we can get to it quickly. So when you are out there going around our pothole crews, please slow down, give them some room. Pay attention when you start seeing a lot of blinking lights and guys walking out on the street. They are trying to make it a safer road for you and a smoother road for you, so give them that space, please. Keep following along to learn more ways the city of Sioux Falls has street cred.
More than 9 out of 10 of our clients are likely to recommend us.
Our neighbors,
their philosophy. Phil Mattinger, CNN, the White House.
A key figure in Donald Trump's post-election rallies has agreed to cooperate with the Justice Department's investigation into the January 6th Capitol riot. Ali Alexander organized several Stop the Steal events after Trump's loss. He says he was subpoenaed by a federal grand jury that's looking into anyone who held post-election rallies. Alexander says he's not a target of the investigation and that he did nothing wrong. Will Smith is facing repercussions for slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars. How the Academy is punishing the actor. That story ahead.
Replacing floors is a big job. Trust Empire.
Endocrine neoplasia syndrome type.
The way Sam's sister saw it, when detectives showed those texts to Cindy, she was dumbstruck.
I could not believe what I was reading. This is someone who's been in my family for almost 13 years.
I was overwhelmed.
When Brian Lord's attorney saw the blood stain, he suggested the blood.
This is my face. It's so natural.
And imagine starting a family and not having to have that huge closet of all those big messes.
They just love him.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody loves it. This is what Waterford is. Everybody knows.
You know 2 things about education. Number 1, school and learning are meant to be done in person, and the human connection of being together will never be replaced. 2, being educated and learning to live and work together in a community setting is still the best training there is to make lasting changes in our lives and in our society. You led the way by showing respect, courage, love, patience, fortitude, and hope throughout this year. You have learned a lot since you started this journey in kindergarten, and I encourage you to continue to embrace being a part of a community that serves and cares, and to never stop learning from whatever life throws your way. Your class has been exceptional in many ways and shown tremendous acceptance and care for all people in our school, and your ability to adapt to an entirely new way of education has been remarkable. Thank you for all you've done in your time at Roosevelt. You have lived out our motto, we are Roosevelt, we are one. Today, most importantly, all of you have become high school graduates. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pride that I present to you the graduating class of 2021.
Bottom tight right here, and I hold it so it hits right here. See this?
Would you like a solution that allows you benefits like these people are seeing in minutes? What would it be worth to you?
That's the fighting spirit.
Twirl means he likes it. Now will it come back down?
The 9 deuce, but Greg.
Extended period, didn't try to do too much there, just got it in.
In your life, worry actually makes things worse, because when you worry about the future, you cripple yourself in the present. So how do we get rid of worry in our lives?
It's not an easy thing to do, Shannon. I mean, it actually affects you physically. I've read that it diseases your nervous system. It actually could shorten your life, not lengthen it. And ironically, you might be worried about how long you will live. So here's what the Bible says in the book of Philippians. Will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. So you need to take your worries and turn them into worship. You need to take your panic and turn it into prayer. It's like a conditioned reflex. You know, there's certain things we teach ourselves to do, like drive a car or you know, to stand up when the national anthem is played. We learn to do these things. So when worry comes knocking, you turn it into a prayer immediately and get perspective, because God is bigger than whatever problem you're facing. And so if you have a big God, you have relatively small problems. But if you have big problems, maybe your God's a little too small.
Well, that's good perspective, that we do have to train ourselves, almost like working a muscle, that when that worry comes, because all of us at some point in life, and for some of us it's a bigger problem than others, if we can train ourselves to have that reflex to sort of let it go and let God handle it, that is a great relief. You and I have talked about the story of Mordecai and Esther, which is in actually both of my books, Women of the Bible Speak and Mothers and Daughters of the Bible Speak. She was carrying a very heavy burden where God had placed her in the right place. He needed her exactly the right time. But with that came a ton of responsibility and worry. And when she was first asked to step up and be courageous, she had a moment of hesitation in there.
Yeah, she did. And I read your chapter in your new book, The Mothers and Daughters of the Bible Speak, and I loved the way you approached it. Because actually, Shannon, when I think of Esther, also known as Hadassah, that was her Jewish name. Esther was her Persian name. You know, she reminds me of you a little bit. I mean, she won a beauty contest. You know, you've done that. But this is a woman who was placed in the palace with King Xerxes that she was married to. She was living in the very lap of luxury, and meanwhile there was a plot hatched to exterminate her people, the Jewish people, and she seemed to be oblivious to it until her cousin Mordecai, who was like a father figure to Esther, made her aware of it. And he said, look, relief and deliverance can come from somewhere else, but who knows that you've not been placed where you are for such a time as this. And I think a lot of times, you know, we're in a difficult situation and we're thinking about, how can I get out of this? Did it ever occur to you or me or any of us that God put you where you are for a reason? It's been said, if you see a turtle on a fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself. And so, you know, I think God places us where he wants us to be. And, you know, Esther had a choice. She could stay silent and maybe see her people exterminated. It was a huge act of anti-Semitism, sort of a precursor to the Holocaust in a way. But she said, hey, if I perish, I perish. And she went for it. And because of her courageous efforts, she saved her people. And the guy who hatched the plot against her, he ended up hanging on the gallows that he had hoped that his enemy, Mordecai, would hang on. That guy's name was Haman. Bad dude. He got what he deserved. But the reality is, you know, we need to make principled stands as followers of Jesus Christ, and God will honor us and bless us for that.
Yeah, and sometimes it
already declared this week a success just by being here. Now, though, the 15-time major winner has made it another memorable career milestone by making the cut at the first men's major of the year, just 40 months on from that horrific Southern California car crash early last year. On Friday, the most challenging of starts for the 46-year-old who's seeking a record-equaling 6 green jacket. Woods having to dig deep after recording 4 of his 6 bogeys on the day within the first 5 holes. In the blink of an eye, his first round 1 under par tally now reading at 3 over par. But there's a reason Woods is rightly regarded as one of the greatest players of all time, and the thought of missing the cut simply not an option. The American powering his way back in the right direction thanks to 4 birdies en route to a second round 2 over par 74.
Haven't played a lot of tournaments of late, so it's been a little bit rusty, but I'm starting to come around, and I felt good about how I fought back today and got myself. I could have easily kicked myself out of the tournament today, but I kept myself in it. You know, if you're within 5 or 6 on that back 9 going into Sunday, you got a chance, and so I just need to get there.
Woods, though, still has plenty of work to do. He's currently 9 shots behind the tournament leader and men's world #1 Scotty Scheffler, who's at 8 under par following a superb round of 67 on Friday. Patrick Snell, CNN, Augusta, Georgia.
Well, before we go, the New York Yankees paid tribute to Ukraine before the season opener on Friday. The Ukrainian national anthem was performed by 11-year-old Brooklyn resident. Her family immigrated to the United States from Lviv in 2006. The Yankees also flew the Ukrainian flag along with the U.S. flag at Yankee Stadium. Well, that wraps up this hour of CNN Newsroom. I'm Linda Kincaid. Good to have you with us. Our breaking news coverage of the war in Ukraine continues on New Day with Christy Paul and Boris Sanchez. Stay with CNN.
If you have diabetes, it's important.
Something happened, and that's the most exciting part because.
And it works great.
Carbon filters for life, absolutely free.
Then you get freeze thaw, especially like out here in the winter when it snows and then that melts, you get this freeze thaw process. You can also have wind that starts to erode the rock. So there's a lot of different things that go to start to break down rock once it's exposed at the surface.
In all, the SDPB team found our way to 5 arches along the canyon walls. 4 that were previously known and no name. There are probably others known only to cliff swallows and turkey buzzards. If rocks could feel, we're not sure if they would want to be discovered or not. We hope this little love note to these hidden geological rock stars does set some questers questing. We also hope that those who undertake the journey understand it won't be easy and that they bring with them a reverence for what nature has achieved here.
On Before We Die.
Police are investigating the death of a man whose body was found in woods yesterday morning.
Why do we only find out second-hand about Stefan Vargic, when there's clearly a link between his and Sean's murders?
Can you prove that?
The same ammunition was used in both killings.
I have information relating to the murder of a police officer. I know where the weapon is that was used to kill him.
Sunday at 9, 8 Mountain, on South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Greetings from Dakota Life in Springfield. We're here on the banks of the beautiful Missouri River, the river that defines and divides our state. And that's where SDPB comes in. We bring you stories of your neighbors from every corner of South Dakota, both sides of the river, and directly to you wherever you are. We create understanding and build community one story at a time, and we hope to tell your story soon. Serving all citizens of South Dakota is our mission. But we need your help with that your partnership to keep that mission strong. We invite you to become a member of SDPB with a financial contribution to ensure that we can serve all of South Dakota and continue to tell your stories. So please make that gift today. Your membership does make a difference. Thank you. Providing fine arts students a statewide stage. We're SDPB.
He still is one.
Much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print.
He meant so much to so many people.
Eastern Ukraine seems to have arrived. A Russian missile strike on a crowded train station.
Gives you skincare and makeup all in one. It's like a thin...
50 people and wounded roughly 90 more. Ukrainian officials say thousands had been using that train station to flee the region in recent days.
Officials say the strike killed at least 50 people, including 5 children. Nearly 100 people there were wounded. The station was packed with civilians.
Meanwhile, has denied that it was behind the strike and is again accusing Ukraine of staging the entire thing. By many accounts, Ukraine overperformed in the first phase of this war, but as Russia regroups and refocuses its strategy on Ukraine's south and east, there are concerns that a more brutal onslaught could be ahead. The president
Well, welcome to Fox and Friends on this Saturday morning. As if we could not get more patriotic, we're going to do even better here. That is the Medal of Honor of Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cash, received here where I am this morning at the National Infantry Museum in just outside of Fort Benning, Georgia. Guys, Will, Rachel, I'm going to miss you on the couch in New York City, but if I have to be anywhere, it's with my fellow infantrymen on display here at the National Infantry Museum. It's a phenomenal place. We're going to take you around it a little bit this morning.
At least killed, including 5 children, hundreds injured, of which at least 100 were seriously so and needed hospital treatment. It is perhaps no surprise that President Zelensky is calling this a war crime, promising to hold everyone involved responsible. And indeed, it has been condemned by world leaders, human rights groups, pretty much everywhere. Russia, however, insists that it was not responsible for this. The U.S. assessment, we are told from officials, is that this was a short-range ballistic missile that was fired from within Ukraine, but from a Russian position. And the Ukrainian military says that that missile was packed with cluster munitions. These are small bomblets that spread and explode across a wide area. And that's particularly distressing when you think that this is what targeted civilians, because this is a weapon that is banned by many countries around the world.
Phil, I want to ask you about something we're learning this morning regarding evacuation routes. One regional military governor said that those routes will be adjusted after this strike. What have you learned?
The Ukrainian officials, they really have no choice. They have to keep trying to get people out of the east. When you think that that is a region where towns, communities and cities have already been bombarded seriously, the expectation is it's going to get there a lot worse very quickly, because Russia is planning a big new assault in the east to break through Ukrainian lines and try and consolidate a wide area of territory. It's no secret. The thought is they're working towards a tight deadline, May the 9th, which is a big military public holiday in Russia. So it's thought it's going to be a particularly brutal operation. And so for all of these reasons, they have to work out how to get vast numbers of people out of the east, despite that terrible attack yesterday, which targeted people who were trying to do just that, evacuate, get themselves and their families to safety.
Phil Black, thank you so much for great reporting and good information this morning for us. Take good care there, you and the crew.
The United Nations Refugee Agency now says that nearly 4.5 million Ukrainians have left their country since the beginning of Russia's invasion, and another 7 million are displaced internally.
Now, with attacks on train stations, the threat to humanitarian corridors, the trip is so dangerous. CNN's Salma Abdelaziz is with us from Poland's border with Ukraine. Salma, I know for so many Ukrainians, this is their first stop after a very long and difficult journey. What are you seeing?
Absolutely. And Boris and Christy, people arrive here, and yes, they've reached safety, but they are deeply connected to what's going on back home. They're asking about relatives. They're asking about their homes. And we've been speaking to people here, and I want to introduce you to someone. This is Timothy. Timothy, we were talking earlier, and I asked you about your home in Kyiv because you've left your home. And could you share with me again what's happened to your home in Kyiv?
Yeah, my home in Kyiv, it's the village Milaya. It's called Milaya. And my house was attacked by a tank.
Attacked by a tank, the house. You showed me a video of your home up in flames. I saw your mom was, of course, crying when she showed me that video. How does it make you feel knowing that you won't be able to go back home again?
I'm not able to go home again, and I'm so, I don't know, it's so strange. And
how does it feel when you're seeing all of these things still happening back home? What's going on in your heart when you're looking at these pictures?
I was so angry and sad.
Very angry and sad. And you still have, of course, family and friends back home. Do you worry about them all the time? Are you calling all the time and asking?
There is already migrants in Poland, like in here, and other Ukrainian cities.
Thank you so much, Timothy, and I'm very sorry about your home. And Boris and Christy, this is what you hear all the time from families here, is they're worried about what's happening back home. They're worried if they will still have a home. But if you ask them, do you want to be a refugee? Do you want to stay in Poland? Do you want to stay in broader Europe? They will say no. They still want to return to Ukraine. Many of them thinking it's just going to be a matter of days, a matter of weeks. We don't know how much longer it will take, but what that's created is essentially a nomadic population of more than 2.5 million refugees every day trying to figure out where they sleep, where they stay, how they get their next meal.
And once they figure that out, as you noted, Selma, the crippling anxiety of not knowing what they could return to in Ukraine, a painful situation indeed. Selma Abdelaziz, thank you so much. Let's dig deeper now with retired Army Major General and CNN military analyst Dana Pittard. We also have with us Josh Rogan.
I'm Mark, and I live in Vero Beach, Florida. My wife and I have 3
news of that Russian missile strike against Iran.
We exercise. I noticed I wasn't.
It's a station where civilians are trying to leave Donbass, a region that has been the focus of intense fighting by the Russians.
Well, good morning, Boris and Christy. Obviously, the attack on the train station is horrible, using a short-range ballistic missile where there's civilians. You're going to have civilian casualties. We've talked about the movement from the Kyiv region to eastern Ukraine by both Russian forces and Ukrainian forces. You know, the Russian forces were using what we call exterior lines. They had to move through Belarus and/or Russia to get to eastern Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainian forces had an advantage because they had a shorter way to go through the roads and the railways to get to eastern Ukraine, what we call interior lines. The fact that the Ukrainian forces were also using the rail lines is an issue. And I think the Ukrainian government's got to look at the dual use of those lines between civilian refugees leaving and military supplies and troop movements going in there. But there's still no excuse for what Russia has done in this illegal war.
Josh, I'm curious because as the days go on, we've seen more and more evidence that the Russians are potentially committing war crimes. I think it's hard to make the case that targeting a railway station is a step towards some kind of military accomplishment, an achievement in a military agenda. From your perspective, why isn't more of the world condemning this? Countries like Israel or India that are kind of straddling both sides of this conflict.
Well, Boris, that's a really important question. The Russian Foreign Ministry actually admitted that the attack on the rail station was a war crime. Of course, they claimed it was the Ukrainian forces that attacked their own rail station, which doesn't make any sense. But the fact that they called it a war crime means that when the evidence does emerge, and it surely will, that these attacks can be attributed back to Russian forces, that war crime can be prosecuted. There's no statute of limitations. The blame falls on everyone from the guy who pulled the trigger all the way up to the guy who gave the order, and that's Vladimir Putin. And as these war crimes mount in places like Kharkiv and Mariupol and Bucha and many more, more and more countries will be pressured and feel pressure to get off the fence. We're talking about India, we're talking about Israel, we're talking about lots of other countries that have tried to stay neutral for whatever reason. Some have security relationships with Russia, some have economic relationships with Russia, but more and more, again, as these atrocities mount, the people in these countries are shocked and mortified, and they'll put pressure on their governments to an extent, and then the international community will eventually come around, I hope, to the realization that a country that's committing war crimes cannot be considered a member of the international community in good standing, and a country that wants to be a member of the international community in good standing cannot remain neutral.
And Josh, I want to stay with you because you wrote about Israel's position in all of this week. I believe we have a full screen. You wrote, quote, Israel's balancing act of maintaining its ties to Russia while offering only tepid support for Ukraine is becoming morally and strategically untenable. Make the case. Why is this strategically untenable for Israel?
Right. The Israeli government under Prime Minister Bennett has said that they need to maintain relationship with Russia and that Israel as a small country can be a go-between. But according to many Israelis that I talked to, including Natan Sharansky, the famous Israeli politician and human rights activist, and who spent 9 years in a Soviet gulag, that position is becoming untenable for a really important reason. Because the things that Israel stands for, democracy, freedom, and human rights, cannot be reconciled with their stance of neutrality on the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Moreover, the fact that Russia is continuing to attack Ukraine means that the spillover effects will affect Israel. We're talking about an economic crisis, an energy crisis, an agricultural crisis, to add to the crisis that faces free and open societies. Those things Israel cannot wall itself away from. Therefore, their neutrality is not only morally indefensible as the country that was born out of the Holocaust and is committed to stand against mass atrocities, but it's also strategically stupid because Israel has to live in this world like the rest of us, and the fallout of this war will affect them sooner or later. So the best way to end it is to help the Ukrainians beat Russia and push the Russians out of Ukraine now. And that means taking a side and arming the Ukrainians to the teeth, in my view.
And General, last question to you. It seems pretty clear that the Russian military has had to recalibrate its efforts after serious disappointments in Ukraine. And now senior U.S. defense officials believe that Russia is actively trying to recruit some 60,000 new troops. The intelligence shows that Russian forces have not solved some logistics and sustainment problems. How do you read this intelligence in the context of the strength of the Russian military and their capabilities?
Well, I think the intelligence is fairly accurate. The Russians have had morale problems. They've had logistics problems. They've had a lot of problems, command and control problems. But Russia still, even with those problems, has immense capability. On April 1st, they had 135,000 conscripts come into the Russian military that will be trained and eventually be used at some point. So Russia has the capability, but what Russia does not have, and Ukraine does have, is the will to fight. And that's that's an intangible that can't really be measured. The Russians have had success in the past in eastern Ukraine. They're hoping to have more success again. The war's gone on for 8 years in eastern Ukraine, and they're trying hard to have some level or claim some kind of victory by the May 9th, 77th anniversary of the end of World War II, called the Great Patriotic War in Russia, which is a huge deal. So we're going to see much more activity in the East because of that.
We will certainly be watching, and we expect some kind of a response from Vladimir Putin. We'll see how it might impact this invasion moving forward. Major General Dana Petard, Josh Rogan, always a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Still ahead, the country, the U.S., of course, confirming its first black woman Supreme Court Justice, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's emotional message to all of the women who helped pave the way for this historic moment. Also, we're standing by for another first, this one millions of miles above us, as the first private space crew is set to dock with the International Space Station. We're going to bring that to you live as it happens. And a remarkable return. Tiger Woods making it back to the Masters just 14 months after that horrific car crash. We're live for you from Augusta National. Stay close.
Wildfires have reached historic levels. As fires keep raging, the need to replace.
My opinion.
Yeah, when I hear Joe, to your point, Rachel, when I hear Joe Biden talk that way, I felt like he must have been talking about the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. What was he watching? We also, if you've looked at the internet, Al Gore's tubes recently, you see that Joe Biden made up a new word in that press conference too. One word to describe America, and it ended up in the word "awizafutimfubu."
No, I didn't hear that.
Not clear what that is yet.
Oh.
Yeah, you got to go watch it, Will. You got to go see. He started on a sentence and then went into something that resembles "awizafutimfubu." It's kind of like the kofifi of a press conference. You got to watch it. It makes no sense. It's scary.
I think I heard my baby Valentina say that this morning. So
I forgot about Al Gore's tubes. All right. It sounds like a biological thing that could be acceptable in 2022. Al Gore's tubes. Men can have tubes. Still ahead, stranded. The scary moments for people stuck on a ride at Universal because of a power outage.
Plus, as Elon Musk buys Twitter shares, a Washington Post op-ed says it's time to prevent rich people from controlling the media. A reminder, Jeff Bezos owns the Post. Musk's response next. Stay with us.
But all of us collectively as Black women, she serves as a symbol of the hard work that all of us have gone through to get to these upper echelons, and what we still have to do to prove that we deserve to be there. Because just as you, Wendy, and I know very well, they're not giving these degrees to Black girls. They're not giving these acceptances to Black women in these elite spaces, especially Ivy League spaces. So, if all of a sudden these jobs are going to Black women, show me where. Because we just had the first Black Supreme Court justice in the history of this nation. So clearly that is not the case. We know that we have deficits when it comes to cabinet positions, Fortune 500 positions. You name it, the list is long. Black women are still excluded because of race and gender and the intersection of both. So this is a day to rejoice another Black woman succeeding, but knowing also she did so with the support of other Black women.
I love that. And Wendy, one of the things I think about is how young children are watching this moment in American history, not just adult Black women. You're a parent. What do you think it meant to your kids, to young Black children, to see Judge Jackson be confirmed, but also to see the reaction of all of us, the parents, reflecting and rejoicing, to Christina's point, about the history being made in this moment?
I think it means a lot to children. Zerlene, I've been on your show a while now, and I always tell you that sometimes we think that kids don't know this, but they actually do. They pay attention to everything we say. They pay attention to our emotions, and they pay attention to our reactions. And for my children, my daughter was home when this happened, actually. One of her comments was, look at her hair. They showed Justice Jackson in the White House, and they showed her, beside Biden. And she said it casually, not really understanding the historic moment of it, because she's only 2.5 years old, but she just noticed her hair. And I think that's so important. And after my daughter said that, I took to my Twitter and I said, how amazing is it that I could tell my children I witnessed the first Black president. I witnessed the first Black woman vice president. And now I am witnessing the first Black woman to, be on the Supreme Court. And that's a historic moment. And all I could, sum it up by saying is, what a time to be alive. So many of our ancestors couldn't even put together what this moment will mean. And as a parent, I am just so blessed and almost beside myself that I can witness this, but be able to, I'm looking for the day when I am 80 years old and I could sit in my rocking chair and tell my kids where I was for each of these historic moments, because it's history. And I think that it propels the future generations to want to do more, because they see how much it has impacted us, that they will not be rejoicing in the first anymore, because this will no longer be something that is abnormal, but this will be something that is normal for them.
I love that. In terms of the next generation, Christina, it's clear that this is history coming at a time where it's needed, right? Because of so many of the issues, whether they be the threats to our democracy, the racial reckoning from 2020, the civil rights issues that are in front of the Supreme Court right now. In terms of the ideological makeup of the court, she doesn't shift the balance. But how important do you think it is in the last few minutes here that this representation and the three liberal justices, all are women, by the way, how important do you think that is in this particular moment in American history?
As you said, Zerlina, we're still basically at a 6-3 court. And, the issues that are coming before the court are of grave concern, not just for women, not just for people of color, immigrants, that everyone should be concerned. But their descriptive representation does matter. If you can see it, you can be it. And we know that the more people who can see Justice Jackson, they might think about law school in a different way. They might think about district level courts or appellate level courts. And that's really important. As far as the substantive conversations, I'm hoping that the temperament of Justice Jackson will help some of her colleagues see the importance of some of these issues. I don't know if she'll necessarily be able to sway them, but we know that the more and more people who are on the court making different arguments and opinions, and you know that better than anyone, hopefully some of her colleagues who have been persuaded on particular issues in the past can hear a new voice and possibly think about the future of our democracy in a different way.
I hope it inspires a whole generation of lawyers. I know that Eyes on the Prize and seeing Thurgood Marshall, that inspired me to go to law school, even though I never practiced. The education is critical. Professors Christina Greer and Wendy Asefo, thank you so much, both of you, for being here on This Week in History. I'm just going to bask a little bit for a moment. Just give me a moment. Please stay safe. Coming up, how far we've come and where we still need to go when it comes to protecting against sexual assault and harassment. We'll be right back.
Let me tell you something, Toba, okay, with the sound drops. They dropped me off in Philadelphia. The show's in New York.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I had to.
Confused.
Me too. I was like, I bought a flight to New York. Why am I in Philadelphia?
Oh, I got it.
Weather. We'll do that segment later.
That office couch, though, is kind of comfy.
Wrong.
It's kind of comfy.
Incorrect.
And,
hard.
All those Rangers sleeping out in the woods right now feel very bad for me.
Does that mean you
had to
didn't
throw down that on me.
Does that mean you didn't shower before the show? Well,
what?
Did you not shower before the show?
Huh? Let's move on here.
Okay.
I can hear them. They're telling me to move on. Sorry, I got to go. Here we go. Elon Musk is being mocked by the Washington Post. An op-ed has said we should prevent rich people from controlling media platforms all of a sudden. And so what's happened is Elon Musk has taken a 9% share in Twitter. He's looking reportedly to reinstitute the American value into a private company of free speech. And yet the Washington Post sees this as somehow bad for free speech because there's fears he may not restrict free speech. Okay, I know it's tough, right? In order to advance free speech, according to the Washington Post, you need to restrict speech. You can see the headline there on your screen. I read the incredible op-ed, and it is absolutely incredible. It's an open call for more censorship and how Elon Musk is a threat. Mark Andreessen, who's also a tech guru, said this at Washington Post: Musk's appointment to Twitter board shows that we need to regulate the social media platform to prevent rich people from controlling our channels of communication. Hey, isn't the Washington Post owned by Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, thanks.
He's not rich, is he?
He's poor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk read this ridiculous, totally not self-aware op-ed, and his response was very short and simple, and it was, laugh my you-know-what off. And that is short, that is the acronym for that, for those of you who don't know that. And, look, this is what the elites want to do. They want to control the channels of communication. They're actually advocating, and this is what happened at that University of Chicago symposium on
Western.com. The rooms look bigger. Power of air, very little foundation.
Absolutely. I've heard that concern from so many cattle producers across the country. Ron, as you think about these cattle herds, has it gotten dire enough for some producers to have to make the decision to liquidate right now, or are producers just marketing some heifers a little more aggressively?
I think really it's the latter. We really have not had an opportunity to see too much cow liquidation in our state yet. Some, but not like we've seen our neighbors up further north in the Dakotas and whatnot this last year. Still, though, we are worried. We did have a lot of movement, I think, earlier than normal. We do graze on wheat pasture during the winter months. A lot of folks just ran out of pasture, had to go ahead and move a lot of their stockers. And
Rita Plus fuels 6.
On the other side of the island, we have a
Science for success.
When it comes to framing demolition, the self-prying crowbar does the work.
Which they even more. I know you guys are.
Price attacking his fiancée. The video was pretty brutal, and the backlash would ultimately end his football career. But the NFL's initial response after Rice was arrested for that assault was actually just a 2-game suspension. That light punishment led to an immense backlash, including from several women who work within the league. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell eventually admitted he didn't get it right and pledged to do better. But now, in a letter to Goodell, 6 states' attorney general are expressing, quote, grave concerns that the pledge never materialized, citing a New York Times report outlining experiences by more than 30 former employees. New York Attorney General Letitia James wrote, female employees described experiencing unwanted touching from male bosses, attending parties where prostitutes were hired, facing unfair criticism based on stereotypes, being passed over for promotions based on their gender, and also being pushed out for complaining about discrimination. Joining me now is Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, MSNBC legal analyst and former prosecutor. So, Kristen, help us understand what exactly these attorneys general are accusing the NFL of and what they have the power to do if the league actually doesn't get its act together.
Yeah. So what the attorney generals are basically saying is, hey, NFL, you are violating the law, specifically the civil rights laws, which require employees to make sure that all of their employees have equal access to all of the rights, promotions, non-hostile work environment, etc. So this letter is really important. As you pointed out, from 2014 and all the promises made, what we're seeing right now is that inequity arises from a culture that really allows it. Are we surprised that in 2014 this happened and now we're in 2022 with all of this racial and gender discrimination? Essentially what the AG's office has the power to do is really investigate this. And we really saw this type of investigation with Cuomo, where Letitia James came out with recommendations and findings. And that is really important because that investigation will allow any person to kind of take those findings and sue civilly or administratively. In this particular case, the EEOC is no doubt going to be involved to ensure that the workplace is safe for these young women.
or if any of these women were constructively terminated or they had to leave their employment because they were subjected to that hostility, they're entitled to back pay, they're entitled to front pay, any promotional money or bonuses that they would have been entitled to but for their gender that they were denied. So there's a lot of things that could come out of this. In addition, Zerlina, the AG's office could seek injunctive relief if they found the necessary prerequisites in order to push for that. And that would be forcing the NFL to engage in sensitivity training, hire consultant, do things along that line so that this culture, this pervasive and severe culture, does not continue.
So you mentioned that the recommendations and findings that the AG puts in the report can be of assistance to people, who want to seek some sort of damages and restitution for experiencing this kind of behavior. I mean, lay out for us the type of systemic problems that a report like this from Letitia James and these other AGs could have. I mean, what's the difference between, an offhand comment that might be discriminatory and the systemic and pervasive nature of this discrimination that the NFL is allegedly engaging in, according to Letitia James?
Yeah, and I want to say, I think the letter demands change. It doesn't say that they're going to investigate it. They do say they'll put their full weight behind it, but it doesn't promise an investigation. But what it says is that if they get complaints, they're going to take it seriously. And it sounds like they've got 30. There's already a lawsuit over on one team. We got the racial discrimination. So a report is likely. But to answer your question, ultimately, whenever there's a suit against an employer, and in this case, the NFL, where the EEOC or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is a governmental body, is involved, there's usually some type of Title VII violation. And that Title VII, in this case, would be gender discrimination. So when you look for gender discrimination, one offhand comment is not going to be sufficient to meet the legal burden necessary to show a violation of Title VII. They have to show that it was severe and pervasive. So I say all that because they really do have to prove that there is a systemic issue. And when you're talking about in 2014 promises made, and these young ladies were reported to being forced to watch that video repeatedly, and you know how horrific that video is for the common person. Why would that be a requirement within the workplace? In addition to that, touching, and like I said, already things that women have to deal with in the workplace, such as unfair criticism. There was also a report, I think it's right in the letter, wherein young women, were actually said that they were having aggressive tones, which is crazy because NFL is, it's ironic, but NFL is kind of an aggressive type sport. But, it's insane that women in 2022 still have to deal with this.
That made me laugh because, as you said, the NFL alleging that women are being too aggressive. Oh, that's you made it funny. That's funny. Kristen Gibbons-Fedden. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today, as always, and please stay safe. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
To help prevent or itching for some cuddle time.
Families have come from all over Ukraine in areas that were more safe and those that were actively bombed. And so I can't imagine what they've seen and what they've gone through and what these children have experienced, hearing air raid sirens, having to run from a hospital ward to the basement, or being in a shelter for a long period of time. So their experiences and journeys to us are very different. What we found is the best source of support for them is through the help of someone on our team who is a child life specialist from the Tabletochki Foundation. And she has wonderful communication skills to help them live through the trauma that they've experienced, to help connect with family members who may have stayed behind in Ukraine but also want to be reunified with them. And whenever she identifies a need for a way that we can provide better psychosocial support, not only in Poland at the Unicorn Center or at one of the Polish hospitals, but even when we've triaged them to other places in Europe or North America, when there are needs identified, they touch base with her and she communicates with us so we can work with our collaborators to make sure that we really provide this whole package of care that takes care of the whole family.
Dr. Marta Salick, we are so grateful for the work you and the teams are doing there. Please let them know as well that they are so appreciated. Thank you. Take good care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And to learn more about ways that you can help the people of Ukraine, go to cnn.com/impact. And thank you for doing so. We'll be right back.
She's feeling the power of Listerine. He's feeling it. Yep, them too. It's an invigorating rush, zapping millions of germs in seconds. For that one-of-a-kind whoa, which leaves you feeling Listerine. Feel the whoa.
Panera chefs have crafted a masterpiece. Succulent seared chicken, a secret aioli, clean ingredients, in a buttery brioche roll made fresh to leave you speechless. Panera's new Chef's Chicken Sandwiches. Enjoy a free drink when you try one.
You're packing a giant bag of buttons?
Yeah, they're lucky. Oh, wow. Just sold my car with car gurus.
Yeah, you did. So you're keeping the buttons and selling the car?
Yep. And she instantly got the best, most competitive offer from our network of thousands of dealerships.
And the best part?
We can pick up the car right from your home.
Clearly. You guys pick up buttons, too?
Cars are more our thing. Yeah. For a limited time, get an extra $500 when you sell your car with Car Gurus.
Your mission, stand up to moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis and take it on with Rinvoq. Rinvoq, a once-daily pill, can dramatically improve symptoms. Rinvoq helps tame pain, stiffness, swelling, and for some, Rinvoq can even significantly reduce RA fatigue. That's Rinvoq relief. With RA, your overactive...
Walk both the audience and me through this, Greg. Explain to me the copyright issue, what's protected by Mickey, and how it could come to an end.
Well, Congress should oppose a renewal of copyright, not necessarily because of Disney's political activism, but because extending it is legally indefensible, Will, and, you know, it's contrary to the intent of the Constitution. Copyright was put into the Constitution by the framers to advance innovation in arts and science and to benefit overall the public welfare. What's happened over the last couple of centuries is Congress has become addicted to extending copyright. 14 years, then 28 years, then 50, then 75, now 95 years. And Disney, over the last half century, has been responsible largely for pushing for these extensions that are now functionally in perpetuity. At some point in time, you reach an apex where all you're doing is extending monopoly power to a company like Disney, further enriching them and harming the public interest. So,
pandemic, we have seen progress in the fight against the other worldwide epidemic of sexual violence against women and girls. And that includes the reauthorization of the Federal Violence Against Women Act, the convictions of R. Kelly and Ghislaine Maxwell. And that said, there's still very much a long way to go. And I want to make clear that right now in April, it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it's a really good time to look at where we are in this fight against sexual violence and harassment. And there's actually no better person to talk to about the Me Too movement because we have the founder of the Me Too movement, which is, I should say, a decade old, more than a decade old, Tarana Burke. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me back.
So let's start with what's changed since that Harvey Weinstein piece in the New York Times in 2017 in terms of the public consciousness, awareness, and understanding of sexual assault and harassment.
Oh man, so much has changed since then. Because it's coming to the public consciousness, right? Just talking about sexual violence publicly has changed. It was just not done in the way that we talk about it. I mean, I think it was starting to bubble up. There were some public cases that had come to light in the years before that. Certainly the Cosby case had started before the Weinstein case, and the cases at Fox had started before that, but nothing like the Weinstein case, before the Weinstein case hit the public. So the public consciousness has changed since Me Too went viral, definitely.
Well, one of the things I think that people realizes how ubiquitous sexual assault and harassment is. I think that, as you said, when it went viral, it was a moment where I think even men who are allied with like feminist movements or, you know, seem more aware that this is a problem that we need to, you know, tackle, they were even surprised by just their entire feeds were overtaken by people telling their stories. Do you think that this movement has really helped more people understand the dynamics of what contributes to intimate partner violence, but also understand just the everyday ways women are dehumanized and harassed as they move around the world?
I think so. I mean, you know, when President Biden took office, one of the first demands that we made of him as a movement and as an organization was that he declare sexual violence a public health crisis. And he did that in his statement about Sexual Assault Awareness Month this year, because it is a public health crisis. And that's evidenced by just how many people responded to the hashtag when it went viral, right? 12 million people responded to this hashtag in just 24 hours. And that lets you know just the breadth and depth of how big this issue is across the world. And I think people now realize just how many lives are touched, just how many people. Like I say all the time, if you are not a survivor, you know one, right? You have come across one. Your life has been touched by sexual violence in some way.
If you're watching the show and you don't know a survivor, I'm a survivor, so now you know one. I would also want to ask you about the things that still need to be done, and also the backlash. So I want to start with the things that still need to be done before we get to the backlash that did actually transpire after the hashtag went viral. Where do we need to go from here? We have a president and administration that gets it, but we also have a lot of elected leaders that absolutely do not get it. So what do we do about that?
Well, the thing is, you can't adjudicate healing, right? And there's so much more to be done than what happens in the White House or in the Congress or in the Supreme Court even. And so there's a lot to be done in the halls of justice, but there's a lot to be done in our communities. We have to shift the way people think about, talk about, and respond to sexual violence. Right now, when people think about racial justice, when they think about climate change, when they think about gun control, they do not place sexual violence alongside these other social justice issues. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to elevate the way people think about social justice and place those along these other social justice issues that we think about. When you think about the ills of the world and the things that we have to collectively face, you need to think about sexual violence as one of those things. We other sexual violence and we isolate it and put it as an individual issue that people have to deal with. So that's one of the things that we have to do, right? If we don't collectively face sexual violence, then we won't even see the beginning of ways to eradicate it. We definitely have to change laws. We have to change policy. Those are things that we had to do even before Me Too went viral. But now that it's something that's in the public consciousness, we do have to think about it as a collective issue that we have to face as a community, as a country.
One of the things that's also happened is the backlash against the movement and people feeling like the movement has gone too far. I mean, do you have any response to the folks that were like, oh, I don't know how to behave now that women are drawing boundaries for how they want to be touched and approached and engaged with? I mean, what's your response to the backlash to the movement?
You know, when people say, I don't know how to behave now that, you know, Me Too has gone viral, there's a Me Too movement, my first response is, how did you behave before? You know, because if you were taking meetings with women with your door closed or do you have a history of complaints? Do you have, like, what did you do before Me Too went viral? This is, like you said, this is about people drawing boundaries. This is about people giving voice to traumas that they experience. This is about us having a set of policies and rules and regulations and existing and coexisting in a world where we have full bodily autonomy. Those are not things that people need to understand in any other scenario. So why do you have to have a special circumstances to understand that now? I don't understand what going too far means when we say we just want you to ask for consent before you touch my body. How can that go too far? Because I tell you what, when Bob in accounting starts having somebody want to fondle his balls before he goes into a meeting, I bet you won't be going too far then. I'm sorry, I know you're not supposed to say balls on TV, but it's true.
With streaming, I actually don't know what the rules are on streaming. They're going to tell me, I guess, in the break. But to your point, I think what you're saying is that I think people are being purposely obtuse when they say they don't understand where the line is. The line is you should ask people before touching them. And if you're not doing that, you're doing it wrong, and you should start there with step one for how you should conduct yourself in public when you are around other human beings. It's what it's all of us deserve that.
As the children say, period with a T.
That's right. You know my show is period, but you know there's a T when that period has a T there on the Zerlina. This is all, it's all connected. Tarana Burke, thank you so much for being here for Sexual Assault Awareness Month and to help us talk through these super, super critically important issues. Please stay safe. Thanks again. Coming up, COVID cases, they are rising again. And even 2 years after the pandemic first began, millions of Americans are not back on the job and are instead taking care of loved ones. We'll look at COVID's effect on the economy and also the uptick in numbers up next.
New to give the Horse Patrol an apology. They need to do that immediately.
Absolutely. I won't hold my breath, but that's absolutely what should happen. Where do those men go to get their reputations back? They deserve that. Now, let's talk a little bit about Title 42. We know that's going to end in May. You live, or your district is a border community. How are these communities bracing for what, this onslaught is, and how helpless do they feel in the face of this?
Yeah, it's been a difficult administration, a year plus with the Biden administration. They won't listen to anybody. They don't really care about what's happening on the border. It's terrible to see, my communities are on the front lines. I represent 42% of the border. And, many people are frustrated.
To working on providing potentially a vaccine with some longer lasting benefits.
Okay. Dr. Susanna Hills, thank you so much for taking time to talk us through what seems to be something we're going to be dealing with yet again. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Tiger Woods, y'all. Tiger is back where he belongs, playing at the Masters, but it was not an easy road to get back to greatness. Coy Wire is...
What I also say is last week we did a bipartisan letter, a Texas delegation letter, urging the administration to not end Title 42. This week we've seen legislation, bipartisan legislation, both in the Senate and the House, urging the president to not end Title 42. We're going to keep fighting and ideally extend Title 42 for as long as it takes in order to have a contingency plan to this crisis.
Yeah, well, meanwhile, your governor says, well, we're going to take these people that are coming across the border, put them on buses, and send them to the steps of the U.S. Capitol so D.C. can deal with this problem. A lot of people saying this is a gimmick, that some of these people want to be dropped off in the interior anyway. But then also your governor said, well, we can't just put them on the bus against their will. They have to agree to it. What's going on here? And isn't the real solution just to make sure they don't come in the country to begin with?
It is a bit of a political theater, lining up 900 buses and going from Texas to D.C. That's a long haul. That requires a lot of money and resources. I get what is happening, though. I want to bring light to the situation. Yeah. And honestly, people are fed up. People are going, if this was in your community, you would be just upset as we are. So I think there's that. I go back to the policy changes. And this is where Congress needs to lead again. And Republicans, when we win back the House, you're going to see us roll out this commitment to America. And in that commitment to America is going to have our plan. Now we can't wait until we win back the House. We got to start now. But I think it starts in Congress.
Well, those on the border communities are really desperate. I'll be heading, by the way, Congressman, to the border this week.
Actions and lung inflammation can occur.
Feel unstoppable.
We've got them all at Reach Literacy. So what's it going to take to put you in a book today? My truck ends up.
But somehow the PBMs just seem unwilling to change. They just want to do business as usual along the lines of what I described in Oregon and what you have people.
Go with Simparica Trio. It's
Really does feel like we've been here before. Like, this has happened before. I don't know why people are acting all surprised. Like, are we in a surge? Has it started? Is it coming?
Right. You know, it's one of those things, we literally have been here before. If you look last year, we saw the same exact thing. We had cases that peaked in January, February. We had a calming down-ish in March, and then we saw another blip in April, followed by July, where we had Delta that reigned. So this is nothing new. And I've said over and over again, we have never been in front of COVID. We've always been playing catch up when it comes to this pandemic. And we're seeing right now how we're letting our guards down too quickly, and it's literally hitting throughout the walls of Congress. This is not something for us to play with, and we really need to start taking this seriously.
It's going to be really hard probably to change state or federal policy because all of the mask mandates have been taken away. I mean, I think this is the worst case scenario. You have an uptick in cases and everybody is out here in large gatherings without masks, and we know what happens when COVID is spreading in that circumstance. Do you think we loosened the restrictions too soon? What do we do about the fact that we're looking like we're at the beginning of a surge with no mitigation in place?
Right. You know, it's one of those things where politicians have driven how we're going to run this pandemic when it should be driven by public health officials. And the idea that we can legislate our way out of this, and we can just mandate whether or not a mask is necessary, as if COVID actually cares what the legal ramifications are of it spreading, is a little bit ridiculous. And what we're seeing is that it's costing us still lives. Yesterday, for instance, we still lost 700 Americans. And I think we fail to remember that those people actually they count, like their lives matter. And they're largely now becoming more and more the working class American, which means that economically we will have a devastation in this country. And again, that's nothing new too. If you look historically at the 1918 pandemic, it was the same thing, that it was followed by the Great Depression, for instance, right? And we know that was a contributory factor of that our workers were sick. And if your worker is sick, then you have no business to run. And so we have to start thinking about this differently and understand that this small, simple act of wearing a mask does not impact you that greatly to the point that you should risk your life to infection with a virus that can kill you, but also can leave you disabled from long COVID.
Well, speaking of long COVID, and again, you can move on with your life because they've figured this out in other countries. They figured out that if you put a mask on your face, you can do a lot of things much more safely than if you just take away all mask mandates and everybody is just out here like the Wild West. But speaking of long COVID, 2 years into this pandemic, as a fairly healthy individual, and there's reports of other healthy people sort of having this kind of line of thinking, you're no longer afraid of dying of COVID. But you absolutely are at this point, 2 years in, scared of long COVID. Can you talk about the risk assessments that parents and folks should make in this particular moment? Maybe they've already had a COVID infection, maybe they are vaccinated, but how should they think about the risk of long COVID as they decide what is safe to do and what's not?
Right. You know, it's one of those things from the very beginning. I always said there are more consequences of COVID than just death. And we know this from other viruses, too. It's not unique. We know other viruses cause cancers. We know other viruses cause disease processes like multiple sclerosis. And there's now more and more studies that are coming out showing that the inflammatory response that infection alone, regardless if you have a severe case or you're asymptomatic in your presentation, the inflammatory response of your body trying to fight off that virus causes an impact on all your organ systems, including your brain. We're now seeing there's changes to receptors that resemble that of Alzheimer's. We see that there's changes to the body as far as your heart function and whether or not you're going to have pericarditis and myocarditis. What does that mean to your likelihood of having AFib, A flutter, right? We have to start considering these things even for our children.
All of that is incredibly scary, but that's why we have you to help us understand. Dr. Ebony Hilton, thank you so much for being here. We'll have you back as always. Please stay safe. Coming up, does Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell have any moral red lines that he will not cross? What he said about that and his contradiction on former President Trump, that's next.
So it's an awesome opportunity for these guys to train up to master their craft and then to put it on display this weekend for everybody.
And mentally tough. Like, I look at these guys out there and what they're having to endure. How do you psychologically prepare yourself for this kind of grueling?
I think a lot of it is replicating the competition conditions inside your training. So I know when we were doing the train-up, we had 2 mini competitions that we did as from Ranger Regiment that they put on to better simulate those kinds of levels of fatigue and just kind of like nutrition plans and everything. We could put it all together ahead of time, so we were more confident going into the competition.
By the way, guys, the lead was never in doubt for these 2 lieutenants, now captains, last year. We were covering it on Fox Nation, and we tried to make it sound dramatic, but you guys were in the front the entire time, blew the entire field away. What do you, when you watch the competition this year, in fact, Captain Pekowski, you're coaching a team out there. What are you seeing? How's it going so far?
It's been a grueling competition so far. So last night on the night road march, the reports we're getting is that only 37 teams out of the 52 teams that started completed the night road march. And that really says something to just the rigor of the competition from last night. The big thing we're looking for, especially moving into day 2 and day 3, is just how is the team cohesion sitting? As guys start to fatigue, as guys make simple mistakes that maybe they didn't think they would, as that fatigue sets in, how do they come together as a team, overcome those obstacles?
Such a great point. The whole thing is a team event. The buddy team, 2 men doing it. I'll tell you, it was a unknown distance night march last night, and some made it and some didn't. But ultimately, gentlemen, thank you so much. We got to leave. We're out of time, but I appreciate everything you've done for us. And we'll keep covering on Fox Nation. More Fox and Friends in just a moment.
America Together
are being adjusted now after that Russian airstrike on a crowded train station that killed dozens of people. We have the very latest for you from Ukraine next.
Difference Makers, brought to you by Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. And Doug.
We gotta tell people that Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance so you only pay for what you need. And we gotta do it fast.
Yes? You want me?